Welcome to Fazza Love Poem. Subscribe now. He gave her the world, not with hands, but with heart. Every sunrise became a promise, every breath a verse written in her name. She had walked into his silence and filled it with color, and for that he had offered her everything. The poems he never shared, the dreams he never spoke, the quiet corners of his soul untouched by fame. She never asked for thrones or crowns. She only asked to be seen, and he saw her like dawn breaking over the dunes. He would have built her a kingdom of stars if she had stayed to see it. But love, he learned, doesn't always end with storm. Sometimes it ends with stillness, the kind that lingers after laughter fades. One evening she simply stopped looking back. The palace lights still burned for her return, but her shadow never crossed the threshold again. And beneath that silence, he understood, not every goodbye is spoken, some are written in absence. Nights grew longer after she left. The wind carried the same softness, but it no longer felt warm. He would sit beside a half-burned candle, watching its flame tremble like a fading heartbeat. Every flicker whispered her name, and every shadow looked like her silhouette. He didn't curse her departure. He couldn't. Her leaving felt too gentle to hate. She had gone the way moonlight leaves at dawn, quietly, almost kindly, as if to spare him the pain of watching. The world he once gave her now felt empty, a vast desert, echoing with what-ifs. Yet even in loss, he held her sacred. He never blamed her for leaving. He blamed his heart for still waiting. The desert stars above him glimmered like tears he refused to shed, and though her footsteps had faded from the sand, her memory stayed carved into his soul, not as a wound, but as something once holy. He had given her poems no one else had heard, words that carried his truest self, the man beneath the prince, the heart beneath the name. She had inspired verses he didn't know existed within him. Now those words felt abandoned, unfinished lines scattered across the wind. He would whisper them sometimes into the night, not hoping for her return, but to remind himself that love once bloomed here. He missed her laughter most, the kind that made the world pause, the kind that made the stars lean closer. But laughter had become a ghost, visiting him only in dreams. He kept writing anyway, not to reach her, but to remember her. For him, poetry was no longer art. It was survival. Each line was a breath, each word a heartbeat stitched to memory. The quill trembled in his hand, like his soul remembering her touch. And through ink and silence, he found a strange kind of peace. He remembered the night she left, or rather the night he realized she was gone. There was no storm, no letter, no sound of footsteps fading, only the absence of her presence, sudden yet complete. Her perfume lingered in the room, faint and haunting, like a farewell he was never given. The candle beside her book had melted into stillness, its wax cold against the marble floor. He sat there for hours, waiting for the door to open, for her laughter to spill through the quiet. But only the wind answered, soft, uncertain, almost apologetic. That's when he learned the truth about love. Sometimes it doesn't end, it just stops belonging. He didn't chase her. Love, he thought, should never have to be begged for. Instead, he let the silence speak, and in that silence he lost her all over again. Days turned into weeks, and still he waited, not for her return but for peace. He thought perhaps time would dull the ache, that the dunes would bury her name beneath their endless shifting. But time, he discovered, doesn't heal what it refuses to forget. Her voice still echoed in his dreams, calling him from somewhere far and unreachable. He'd wake before dawn and stand by the window, watching the horizon pale, remembering how she once said she loved the moment just before sunrise. He'd whisper to that empty sky, "It's still beautiful," as if telling her through the wind. The palace halls still glowed with golden light, but it all felt dim without her laughter weaving through it. Love had left him not broken, but hollow, like a song that ends mid-note, its melody unfinished, its silence eternal. He found her ribbon one day, tangled in the pages of an old book. It was the color of twilight, soft, faded, familiar. He held it between his fingers and felt time collapse. For a moment she was there again, smiling, alive, reaching for him. Then the vision faded, and he was left with only fabric and memory. He placed it in his journal, beside a poem she once inspired, and closed the cover gently, as if tucking her into sleep. That's how he kept her, not through anger, not through sorrow, but through quiet remembrance. Love, he realized, doesn't demand space. It survives in fragments. A scent, a word, a ribbon forgotten. He could no longer call her his, yet everything around him still whispered her name. The sounds outside shimmered like her eyes once did, and though she had left without goodbye, her absence had become his constant companion. The world expected him to forget, to smile, to move on, to fill the void with new faces, new stories. But he couldn't pretend she was replaceable. She wasn't just a chapter, she was the book itself. He walked through crowds, yet felt unseen, for the only gaze that had ever truly known him was gone. Her love had been quiet but complete, the kind that doesn't ask, only gives. When it ended, it didn't shatter him, it refined him. He began to understand that heartbreak could also be grace, that love's true purpose isn't to last, but to transform. She had taught him how to give without measure, how to feel without fear, and though she left without a word, her silence had become scripture to him, something he read in the wind, the moon, and the trembling of his own pulse. Sometimes he wondered why she left. Did love fade, or did life pull her elsewhere? He would never know, and perhaps that was mercy. Answers can wound deeper than absence. So he chose to believe she left not out of indifference, but out of destiny, that her chapter in his story had simply reached its last line. And if fate ever carried her words back to him, he would still listen with love, because forgiveness, he had learned, is the final form of devotion. He spoke to her shadow often, to the memory that lingered by his side when the world slept. He'd tell her that he still wrote for her, not to bring her back, but to keep her real. The desert heard him, the stars bore witness, and somewhere, perhaps, the wind carried his words to her, like prayers disguised as poems. Years passed, and still her memory didn't fade. It simply softened. The pain no longer burned, it glowed. He would smile sometimes, thinking of her laugh, her stubborn grace, her way of leaving the room without taking the light with her. He found peace not in forgetting her, but in cherishing the way she once made him feel alive. Love had broken him open, and in that breaking it had remade him. He became a gentler man, one who understood the fragility of hearts, the beauty of goodbyes never spoken. The desert still whispered her name, and he still listened, not with longing, but with love that had matured into stillness. She had left, yes, but not everything that leaves is lost. And so beneath a quiet moon, he finally spoke to her one last time, not to call her back, but to thank her, for the ache, for the lessons, for the poetry she unknowingly wrote through his heart. You took nothing, he whispered, you only returned me to myself. The night listened, calm and endless. The half-burned candle flickered one final time, before surrendering to the dark. He smiled, not in sorrow but in peace, for even though she left without goodbye, her presence had become eternal, not as a wound, but as a whisper. He gave her the world, and she gave him something greater, a soul that learned how to love, even after being left behind. And under the desert stars that love still breathed, quiet, patient, infinite.